In this video, I'm going to review Sony's new Bravia XE93, explain why it's the best HLED LED LCD TV we've ever tested when it comes to HDR performance, and give you 2 important tips to get the best out of the television. Coming right up. Hi everyone, this is Vincent here from HDTVtest here. I'm a professional TV reviewer and calibrator. In this channel, we do scientific TV reviews, unboxing videos, settings tips and tricks, and also the odd video interviews. So if you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing by clicking this button right here. Okay, we've spent the past 2 weeks or so testing the Sony XE93. Our review sample was the 55-inch KD-55XE9305, which is the 3-pin plug UK version, but it is also available in 65 inches. The equivalent model number in the USA is the Sony X930E. The design is not very different from last year's XD93, with a slim black bezel and a central stand. Our review unit has a slight tilt backwards, which we are not entirely sure is intentional or not. The back of the television has a crosshatch pattern with a champagne gold tinted finish, and the connections input are found on the right side of the panel. Like the ZD9, there are 4 HDMI ports, but only HDMI inputs 2 and 3 are HDR compliant. Very thoughtfully, Sony has also included a neat cable management system and multiple plastic panels to cover up the ports and achieve a clean look. Like more and more Sony TVs these days, the XE93 comes with a large external power brick, but the detachable power cables are fairly long, so it shouldn't be a problem for most installations. Last year's Bravia XD93 was equipped with slim backlight drive technology, but this year Sony has changed the LED module arrangement on the XE93 and called the technology Slim Backlight Drive Plus instead. On the 2016 XD93, 2 layers of LED modules were stacked together on the sides of the screen, but on the XE93, the LEDs have now been moved to the top and bottom of the display, as you can see from our thermal scan. Why has Sony decided to change the LED placement from the sides to the top and bottom? We're not exactly sure, but one possible reason is higher peak brightness for HDR. By mounting the LEDs at the top and bottom, there's less distance for the light to travel to the center of the screen compared with the side-mounted LED configuration. Indeed, the Sony XE93 or X930E is a light cannon, delivering a peak brightness of 1370 nits on a 10% window test pattern in HDR mode. And unlike last year's Samsung KS series, whose peak brightness can only be sustained for 30 seconds before tanking to 500 nits, the XE93 can hold on to this level of peak brightness for at least a few minutes, contributing to a more consistent HDR experience. But arranging the LEDs in this orientation is not without its own downsides. For one, the top and bottom letterbox bars in scope movies cannot be totally darkened. When bright objects appear against a dark background, the whole vertical column needs to be lit, so you not only get hallowing or blooming artifacts, but also spillover brightening of the letterbox bars. I'm using the scene from The Dark Knight Rises as an example. Batman is meeting Catwoman in an underground tunnel. Hopefully you can see it from the camera, but the letterbox bars just above where the lights are look brighter than the rest of the bar. If you are sitting at an angle, the effect is even more pronounced. In my opinion, this is a problem because the letterbox bars frames the picture on screen. A consistent inky black bar blends into the bezel and gives the image more pop and contrast. When you get letterbox bars that are not only not black, but also fluctuate in luminance from one portion to another depending on what's shown in the active picture area, the cinematic feel of the film is reduced significantly. For this reason, I highly recommend using some gentle bias lighting rather than watching the Sony XE93 in a pitch black room. The most accurate bias lighting solution is the Ideal Lume series from Cinema Quest in the USA. I'll put a link to this company in the description below. With peak white set to 120 nits in SDR or standard dynamic range, black level measured around 0.03 nits on a 4x4 ANSI checkerboard test pattern. This gives us a native contrast of around 4000 to 1, which is expected of a high-quality VA LCD panel. True local dimming is rarely possible from an HLED LED LCD. As you can hopefully see from this clip, a small white box moving slowly across the black screen is accompanied by chunks of haloing. Again, sitting straight onto the TV and using some bias lighting will help make these haloing or blooming artifacts less obvious. Like all Sony TVs reviewed so far, the Bravia XE93 still doesn't offer any advanced color management system or CMS. In the past, we've never really found a need for it because once grayscale gets calibrated on Sony televisions, the colors generally do fall into place quite nicely. However, the ZD9 was the first Sony TV we wish we had access to a CMS, and it's the same with the XE93, probably because they share the same underlying X1 Extreme chipset. Don't get me wrong, the colors on the KD-55XE9305 still looks very natural, but as you can see from this color checker chart, some are oversaturated relative to the reference standard. Like all LED LCD TVs, the Sony KD-55XE9305 is a sample and hold display. If you turn off motion flow, the TV will deliver a motion resolution of 300 lines according to this test pattern here. Setting motion flow to standard or smooth will double motion resolution to 600 lines but introduce interpolation artifacts and soap opera effect. To achieve the highest motion resolution of 1080 lines, you have to activate backlight scanning on the Sony XE93 by choosing either motion flow clear or custom, then setting clearness to max. In either case, the light output will be dimmed slightly because of how backlight scanning works, but you can always increase the brightness control to compensate. Also, despite the help of backlight scanning, there's no way to achieve 1080 line motion resolution unless you throw in some motion interpolation, so there'll be some soap opera effect and interpolation artifacts. Even with motion interpolation switched off, Sony has some of the smoothest motion handling in their business, and that applies to the Bravia XE93 too. We saw no frame skipping, stutter or judder from slow panning shots in 24 frames per second Blu-rays or in 50Hz interlaced broadcast content. To test the quality of upscaling, we put up an SMPTE RP133 pattern on screen from an Oppo 203 player with the source direct function, so the output signal is PAL or 576 lines interlaced. Like the flagship ZD9, the Sony 55XE93 delivers the best upscaling we've seen from a consumer television. The lines all look very sharp and detailed, and there's very little ringing, noisiness or junk pixels that we can see. Sony engineers have done some truly amazing work here. We also really like the smooth gradation feature, which worked very effectively to smooth out posterization from sources with lower bit depth or heavier compression. Sony is the only TV brand that we know of to include this function in the user menu. I don't know how else to say this, so I'm just going to come right out and say it. HDR looks spectacular on the Sony XE93. Before testing this TV, I genuinely never thought that this kind of performance was possible from an HLED LED LCD, but Sony proved me so wrong. Wow! Helped by a peak brightness of 1370 nits that could be sustained pretty much indefinitely, the HDR images just pop from the screen. In fact, in anything that's not really a dark scene, the XE93's HDR picture looks almost like a ZD9. Of course, in dark scenes, the flagship ZD9, which has 648 local dimming zones, maintains its deep blacks much better while exhibiting less haloing and blooming artifacts. We also played a couple of HLG encoded video clips on the XE93, and one called Travel XP successfully triggered HDR mode on the TV. The brightness goes up to max. So it is very possible that this TV is already compatible with HLG or hybrid log gamma, which is the broadcast HDR standard, but we probably still need to wait until live transmissions start before definite confirmation. In terms of gaming responsiveness, the Sony XE93 behaves differently depending on whether you send the TV a 1080p or a 4K video signal. If you send a 4K signal, it doesn't matter whether it's SDR or HDR, the input lag is 25 milliseconds according to our Leo Bodnar tester. But if you send a 1080p signal, the input lag jumps up by 1 frame to 42 milliseconds. We think it's probably caused by the extra work the X1 Extreme chipset has to do to upscale 1080p source to the 4K screen. Bottom line is, if you want the most enjoyable gaming experience on the Sony XE93, send a native 4K output from a Sony PS4 Pro, a Microsoft Xbox One S, or a 4K gaming PC, even if you are playing a 1080p game. I've never done this before, but someone suggested in my initial unboxing video of this TV that I install an app to find out the hardware specs of the Android TV, so here it is. I don't profess to know what most of these mean, but from playing around with the Sony XE93, it's the fastest and most responsive Android app experience on the TV yet. However, I still think LG's WebOS and Samsung's Tizen Smart TV platforms are more intuitive. Despite not applying for Ultra HD Premium certification, Sony has a HDR winner on their hands. The XE93 comfortably outperforms many UHD Premium TVs that are available to buy on the market today. In fact, its HDR performance is so good, I'm going to call it a baby ZD9. Before I finish this video, I have 2 tips for owners to get the best out of this television. Because of how the LEDs are placed at the top and bottom of the screen, the letterbox bars cannot be truly darkened. So I strongly advise that you sit straight to the television, don't watch the TV in a totally darkened room, and instead use some bias lighting to make the hallowing or blooming artifacts less visible. Also, for playing games, this TV is at its most responsive when receiving a 4K video signal, so set your PS4 Pro or Xbox One S to output 4K even if you are playing 1080p games. If you found this video useful, please click the like button and subscribe to the HDTVtest YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.